By now, we have firmly established that the date of 476 for the fall of the Western Roman Empire was a later fabrication of the Eastern Roman Empire during the reign of Justinian in order to justify a war against the Germanic kingdoms of the West. But if 476 was a fabrication, what then would be the real date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire? As we have established in past videos, the Eastern Roman chronicler Marcellinus Comes was the writer who first put out the idea that the Western Roman Empire had fallen in 476, about which I talked in this video here. As we have said, by all definitions of empire, the kingdom of Theodoric was much more an empire than the officially branded Western Roman Empire of the 470s. It had a larger territory. It was politically more stable. There were no constant usurpers and civil wars. And after 510, Theodoric even reigned effectively over the Visigothic kingdom. Thus, taken together, a large part of the former Western Roman Empire was ruled from Ravenna, as had been the case in the last years of the Western Roman Empire after the death of the Emperor Anthemius. We could thus say that except for the detail that Theodoric did not hold the title of Western Roman Emperor, he did in fact rule as one. Coins were issued that have a much higher quality than the low-quality Western Roman coins of the 460s and 470s. New buildings were constructed in Ravenna. The Roman institutions were meticulously preserved. Consuls were elected in the West. The Roman Senate was convening in Rome as if nothing had changed, and the urban prefect of Rome, the Praefectus Urbi, got tax revenue from the Ostrogothic state in order to protect, repair, and maintain the ancient monuments of the city of Rome. Roman law was continued to be practiced, Roman literature and rhetoric was being taught, and great statesmen such as Cassiodorus, Symmachus, and Boetius were residing at Rome and continuing the traditions of the Romans. Latin was still spoken, and even trade began to somewhat re-emerge after the tumultuous years of the 470s. The Roman roads were still functioning and used. Roman aqueducts were still carrying water to the large cities of Mediolanum, Ravenna, Neapolis, and Rome, and the Roman baths were still in use throughout Italy. Even games were hosted in the Circus Maximus. During the consulship of Eutharic, who was appointed to this ancient office in 519, a consulship that was even accepted by the Eastern Roman Emperor Justin I, games were held in the Circus Maximus and the Colosseum. Eutharic entered the city in a triumphal procession that still inspired awe and might have resembled the old imperial triumphs. Regular gladiatorial games had by now been fully abolished, but animal hunts were still very popular, and so the venatores, the animal hunters, were still chasing wild beasts in the Colosseum for Eutharic's consulship celebration. Chariot races were organized in the Circus Maximus, where the green and blue factions were battling each other in furious races, which not seldomly led to tumultuous scenes of brawls and fights, even up to outright warlike situations between the chariot racer factions. Quite often, the chariot racers from Rome had to flee to Constantinople and vice versa when things got too heated. But the kingdom of Theodoric was also one of religious tolerance. Theodoric and his Ostrogoths were Arian Christians, while the largest part of the Roman population were Chalcedonian Christians. But there was still paganism, and many old pagan rites were performed in Rome and the surrounding countryside. For example, as Procopius tells us, even as late as 537, when he was in Rome, did the population participate in the old pagan festival of the Lupercalia. Or the temple of Janus in the Forum Romanum was still being opened in times of war and closed in times of peace. In the more rural areas, the old pagan religion was still being practiced in parts, and it appears that Theodoric did not mind. And please like this video and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And please consider supporting our work on Patreon or via YouTube membership, because the long-term sustainability of this channel unfortunately depends on your support. YouTube is not really generous to such a niche topic about the fall of the Roman Empire, and therefore the ad revenue is extremely low. So in order to be long-term sustainable, I unfortunately need your financial support via Patreon or YouTube membership, as sorry as I am to say this. And we have a new Caesar member, Alessandro Maiorianus. Thank you so much, Alessandro, for supporting this channel in such a generous way. And I would like to thank each and everyone who is supporting this channel in any form. Thank you so much, friends. Gratias tibiago, amici. So we could say that the Western Roman Empire still existed in the early 500s, only that instead of a Roman emperor, there was now a Germanic king, who in fact for all intents and purposes behaved like a Western Roman emperor. And it must be noted that even before 476 AD, many times the Western Roman Empire was in control of a barbarian magister militum, for example Arbogast, Stilicho or Ricimer, and the Western throne was sometimes vacant for many months. So a Germanic ruler was by no means an unheard of situation. In fact, there was a remarkable continuity after 476, so that nobody in the West of that time would have thought of seeing 476 as the date for the fall of the Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire was very much alive and well for the vast majority of the Romans living in Italy, in Dalmatia or in Visigothic Spain. But this was about to change. The Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian had a very different vision of a Roman Empire, and thus he unleashed a series of wars against the Western Germanic kingdoms. First, the Vandal kingdom fell to the Eastern Romans in 534. Then in 535 the war was unleashed against the Ostrogoths, about which I talked in detail in these two videos here. But while the war against the Vandals was quick and their kingdom was annexed with no negative impact for the local Roman population, this time it was very different. From 535 until 562, Italy was devastated so utterly and so completely that it would be plunged into the Dark Ages. The city of Rome was severely damaged and depopulated. At one point in the Gothic Wars, hardly any people were left living in the city. The population shrank from 100 to 200,000 people before the wars to 30,000 after the wars. Famine ravaged the land after the sun was weakened in 536 by a series of volcanic eruptions. The plague swept over the empire and Italy after 541. Mediolanum, the second largest city in Italy, was razed to the ground in 539. Over 10,000 citizens brutally killed by a coalition of Goths and Burgundians. All Roman senators were either killed or fled to Constantinople or land estates. The offices of consul and praefectus urbi ceased to exist in the West. Roman law, libraries, and other old Roman institutions vanished. The aqueducts of Rome were destroyed, flooding the Campania and turning it into a disease-infested marshland. The large imperial baths, some of which had been in continuous use for over 500 years, ceased to work and were abandoned. The Lombards then invaded Italy in 568, fracturing the peninsula into Lombard-ruled and Eastern Roman-ruled territory, a fracture from which Italy would need 1300 years to recover, which would also facilitate the estrangement of the Eastern and Western Christian Church. In short, everything that had been Roman was utterly and completely destroyed in the Gothic Wars. We can thus say that the real end for the Western Roman Empire started in 535 AD and was completed in 553, when the Goths were finally defeated at the Battle of Mons Lactarius by the Eastern Roman general Narses. But only in 562 were the last Frankish and Gothic strongholds defeated in Italy, so that the peninsula saw 27 years of lengthy and incredibly brutal wars. The cities of Italy that before the Gothic Wars had been prosperous now lay in ruins. The population utterly impoverished and shrunk. The Western Roman Empire now really had fallen, and this fall started slowly in 535, started really accelerating after 546, and by 562 was complete. So Rome did not fall in 476, but from 535 until 562. These 27 years for me saw the real fall of the city of Rome itself and of what we could have called a new resurgent Western Roman Empire. Thus, Justinian, by wanting to restore the Western Roman Empire, had in fact ended it. Another one of these ironies of history. And if you are interested in how the Gothic Wars devastated the city of Rome, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you are more interested in the Gothic Wars themselves, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history, gratias amici imperii Romani, and bene valete.